Hello, everybody. Tyler, if that's you, give me a shout out in the comments, buddy. Hey, everybody, welcome to our real first test of Restream tonight. We're doing a live stream testing out some new software to see if I can't figure out how to play back videos, pictures, and some other things happening at the same time. So if you're here and able to see the comments, please feel free to shout out something in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer some questions as we move forward. So as I'm pulling up some pieces here to share with you guys tonight, and as we're waiting for some people to arrive, I thought I'd go ahead and share with you a short video of our latest trip to St. George, Utah. So if you want to sit back and watch for a couple minutes, this will give me some time to pull out my questions as well as some things I want to show you guys tonight. All right. Thanks again, guys, for joining tonight. Again, this is kind of a test for me to run through a new program called Restream.io. I'm running the free version, but even this one lets me do a little bit more than I could do the last time, where I can share some videos and photos with you guys. So what I'm hoping to do is kind of start what becomes kind of a weekly thing where I could take some questions from somebody that has a bike restoration or a resto mod project they want to work on. And hopefully by answering their questions on live stream, I can help out a number of people at the same time, or at least we can try help each other out. So having said that, this last week, out of the blue, I got some snail mail, an actual letter here from a gentleman in Montana named Bruce, who was kind enough to tell me that he's been watching the channel for a couple years and is now trying to restore a early specialized rock hopper. And he sent some nice color prints off his home computer here. This appears to be somewhere around a 91 to 93 based on the color scheme. But as a person that's getting a little bit older, whatever that means, he's wanted to resto mod this and convert this into a bike that he could use for touring. And he asked some really good questions, gave me his phone number, and based on his conversation, I thought I would just kind of talk about the viability of taking a bike that maybe you purchased 20 years ago, 30 years ago, And if you're like me, you probably have a couple project, what we call dad bikes, that you're thinking about restoring. And certainly there is a level of nostalgia of taking something that was, your pride and joy when you're younger and bringing it back. But there's also an element I think that's important to take into consideration, which is that most of us, as we get older, we can't ride what was very much a style of racing bike for back in the day. And if you guys remember back in the 90s, it was very common to get a stem where the seat height was inches, sometimes 6 inches taller than the flat bars up front. And so it was difficult to have a very comfortable ride for very long. And while it looked great on the showroom floor, these bikes were not always very comfortable to ride. So having said that, I talked with Bruce for some time. We talked about his situation. He talked about some options because he wants to make sure this bike could keep up with the trails. Here you can see he's got all of his old, the old Dior cantilevers and 3x7 drivetrain. So as we talked about his upcoming trip, he said he wanted to be able to travel approximately 650 miles over in Europe on this bike. And he wasn't concerned about getting it there. His concern was, would the bike last? And the more we got talking about it, I realized he was kind of like me, where he doesn't have the same flexibility he used to have as a 20-year-old. And in fact, his back hurts. He's got some knee pain and things. So we started talking about what could be done. And certain bikes, the geometry is there where you could put on a suspension fork and raise it up and kind of rake it out a little bit, and it wouldn't be too much of an issue. But the more we got talking about his bike, we realized that he has a 1-inch head tube on here. It's a threaded headset. And by the time you raise it up even just an inch or two, the rake on this would start to get pretty extreme coming down. And so I may or may not have talked him out of the project, but the idea is that it'd be great to fix up, but it may not be worth putting the kind of money into it to put on a suspension fork, different handlebars, different drivetrain entirely. And so I told him I would go looking at some of the modern bikes today and see what you can find that may have the feel you want, but doesn't break the bank either. And so I don't know how many of you guys have been in that same situation where you started putting some money into a bike project and before you knew it, it was going to be a catastrophe. I've had several bike projects go that way before, where we thought we'd just upgrade to a 1x9 system. And before you knew it, we'd be doing so much to add on a new freewheel in the back, add on spacers. It was going to take all kinds of work to dish the wheel out and to make it work right. And so sometimes I think bike projects, while they can be a lot of fun to resto mod, you're better off to just fix it up and have maybe a family member ride the bike versus you trying to convert it to something all the way. So hope that makes sense. This is still a great bike, and for tooling around a couple miles would not be a bad fit for this gentleman. But I would also say that sometimes things in the modern world are much cheaper than trying to resto mod and repaint something from the past. So what do you guys think about that? Are there some bike projects you've worked on where it was still cheap enough to do a resto mod? What did you do when it came to that time where you were trying to decide between putting on new wheels, a new drivetrain, and a fork? And while you guys are thinking about that, I'm going to go and pull up my next video here. Okay. And if you guys want to make some comments, I'll be happy to put them up here on the screen. While I'm waiting on that, I'm going to go and play for you the full trailer of our upcoming documentary that's going to come out this Sunday for Big Brother Lowriding. This is something I worked on with a gentleman over in Pocatello named Robert Wallace for some time. And I'm going to go and play for you the trailer, and I'll take any questions you guys have.
Hi, my name is Robert Wallace. I started the nonprofit organization Big Brother Lowriding to help at-risk youth get off the streets and find a program that could actually give them progression in their life and find other things than might end them down a bad path. When I was younger, I spent some time in the foster care system. I think it gave me an outlook of feeling kind of alone. I never felt like I could belong. at a home or friends because it just wasn't promised, you know. And due to being in the foster care system, there was a portion of my life I kind of bounced down the wrong roads and took a path that led to places that was hard to get back from, but gave me experiences in life that made me a tougher person and gave me a better understanding on how, as an adult now, I can help younger kids to break from that life.
Okay. So this is a great program, but it still takes a lot of clicking and switching to go around. So thanks for your patience. So I wanted to share that with you because we've put quite a bit of work into this little documentary. It's only 10 minutes long, but this is going to be the start of what I hope is kind of a change for the channel. We'll still definitely be doing bicycle repair and restoration, but as much as I love showing projects that I've worked on, I think it's just as cool to show other people's projects. So some of you have been coming tonight, like Yard Sale Cycles and others. If you'd be interested, I would love to do a collaboration with you where we talk about some of the projects you've worked on, share some of your pictures. It's just a lot more fun where it's not just me talking about a bike project, if that makes sense. So this Sunday, this little documentary will come out, and as part of that, we'll be talking about how I'm going to try help market, as well as one of my sponsors, bikeflights.com. We're going to try and market a, not necessarily a fundraiser, but a way of helping out Robert with the work that he's doing in Pocatello. So something I'll say more about on Sunday is that bikeflights.com is going to help pay for shipping as well as bike boxes to go to anyone that would like to send bikes and parts to Robert Wallace in Pocatello. So if you have some frames, doesn't have to be a Stingray, but if you got a frame or some parts you're thinking maybe I could do some donations with, we'll talk some more about that on Sunday because it's going to be kind of a cool collaboration between bikeflights.com and this channel to help Robert Wallace with what he's doing. Okay, coming back to our main topic here. Again, Yard Sale Cycles, thanks for joining on this. Yes, lots of projects can get out of hand quickly. You know, a lot of people will think to themselves, I got this old mountain bike, I love it a lot. All I want to do is just upgrade the fork, put on a suspension fork. But they forget that they've got cantilever brakes on there. And by the time they want to add, you know, any type of modern suspension fork, the posts are so much bigger, and it doesn't have the old brace, the old arch brace. So pretty soon they can't use their cantilever brakes and they can't use their cantilever levers. So you're changing out the whole shifter or possibly brake lever pods. And if that happens, you could also be replacing your headset, your stem, your bar. And so some things get kind of expensive quick. But in general, if you have a mountain bike that you're looking at changing out a suspension fork with, the two big things we always talk about is looking at the angle of the fork. Modern bikes nowadays, if we had a flat line here and we're raking out the fork, the more lax it is, as we call it here, the more it's raked out. The more straight up and down it is, we have issues with turning on either far end. And so a lot of people try to find that sweet spot where they'll take off the old fork, put on the new one, see how it feels without necessarily putting on the new headset to see is this going to work or not. And there's kind of a sweet spot in the 90s, somewhere around 96 to around 99, moving into the 2000s, where you can still do that. And so while this is a great bike, probably if it was me doing this here, I would keep the rigid fork on this. The wheels, if they're in good shape, would probably do an overhaul where we overhaul the bearings in the hubs, the crankset, the headset, replace the cables, housing, those kind of things, and just do a couple of simple things like put on a much more of an upright handlebar if that was a pain point for him, as well as the saddle. We would change out the saddle to something more comfortable than what's on there. Again, there's lots of places where you can find parts used. I've been surprised on Instagram just how many places that's their entire listing of stuff they have is used shifter pods, used tires, things that are still good from the 90s. So if any of you are looking for options and saying to yourself, boy, where could I find some parts? I'll put down some listings here in the comments after the live stream so you can see this. But there's at least 3 different places on Instagram I go to, as well as on eBay. All right. Okay, so we've talked briefly about the trip we had down to St. George. We showed you a little teaser trailer for the upcoming Big Brothers documentary piece. And I'm interested to see what Bruce decides to do with this specialized bike. He said this week he'd be going around to a number of bike shops up there in Missoula, Montana, to try and look for possibilities. Maybe it'll be a gravel bike, maybe it'll be a used mountain bike. But if you guys have noticed, the prices on new bikes have been dropping, and the prices of used bikes within just a couple of years have been dropping substantially. And so if you're to do a major restoration, let's say we were talking about repainting a frame, doing all kinds of parts. My friend Tyler that's on here, we worked on one of his rock hoppers about a year ago. And we probably had around $700 involved in it, just replacing the parts and powder coating the frame. So these things can get kind of expensive. And I would definitely suggest to people that looking for a used bike might be the better answer if the geometry is correct. Okay. Last thing I just wanted to touch briefly is just on budgeting for labor. For some people, they're going to have all the tools and the skill sets needed to do an overhaul. But if you were to take an older bike in and you know what you want to have done, you're just looking at what is it going to cost to do an overhaul. The price of doing something like this, where we take the older wheels, the bottom bracket, and the headset, and we overhaul the bearing surfaces, probably around $200 labor is what we're looking at nowadays. US, West Coast. I can't speak for the East Coast, but around $200 would cover the cost of labor, and then to a certain degree, cables and housing. After that, you'd be into pads, tires, tubes, another $150 easily. And so it's when you start adding on the bigger parts that were a big change up, things like the stem, the handlebars, seat posts, those kind of things, it starts adding up fairly quickly. But like I said, I'll be adding in some links down here below in the comments after the live stream's over to point some places where you can try and find some of these parts easier and cheaper. All right, here's a comment from Tyler. This is my friend that we did his restoration that's on the channel. That's right, because Tyler got his new Trek full suspension bike. That's awesome. Awesome. Great. Well, everybody, thank you for joining tonight. This is just meant to be kind of a quick test of the stream. It looks like the videos are working. We're able to share videos and some music and things. So this coming Sunday, hopefully by 8 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Time, we will start to play as a premiere, the full documentary of Big Brothers Lowriding. It'll be about 10 minutes long, and we'll have a message at the end. So anyone that's interested in maybe donating some parts, I can get you hooked up with bikeflights.com to send you a free bike box and to arrange for shipping to get some parts to Robert Wallace. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Hope you have a great night, and we will see you on Sunday.